Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program, Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick. Mike Fitzpatrick represents the 8th Assembly District. That includes parts of Suffolk County. We thank you folks on Long Island for joining us today. Nice to see you, Mike Fitzpatrick.
Mike, great to be with you, and our time together is becoming shorter and shorter here.
Just a few weeks to go to this 2017 legislative session. This one went by pretty quick.
Indeed it did.
Yeah, as we get older, we tend to say that more, don't we? Where'd the year go? Where'd this session go?
There's an old saying, the guys down at the park at basketball, the older you get, the better you were. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. So here we are, just a few weeks ago to this session. We can spend some time talking about what's left to do, or even looking back as to what has been done in this session or hasn't been done.
Yeah.
But let's start with a kind of a theme, if you will. Upstate New York faces this. Long Island has been hearing report after report about declining population. People are looking to get out of New York State, right?
Young people in particular, and that is.
What's the deal with that?
Well, the upstate economy is stagnant. In fact, it's going backward because you're losing your young people. That's one of the reasons why on Long Island you're seeing these transit-oriented developments, the push for the third rail on the Long Island Railroad in Nassau County to facilitate some of these potential projects. Long Island is, you can't build outward. You can't go north. Long Island Sound, you can't go south. The ocean, you can only go so far out on the east end. So you have to build up, and this is, it runs into a little bit of resistance from people who don't want to see increased density, and you're not going to see it everywhere on Long Island, but in your downtowns. How do we revive our downtowns? How do we make, just to digress for a moment, since 1990, we've lost 16% of our young people, 18 to 34.
Wow, that's a big number.
It is significant, and the city's growth is roughly the same. They've grown. So I see it with my own two children. They both, back when I was their age, no one wanted to live in the city. The city wasn't safe. The city was dirty. The city was, everybody wanted to get out of the city. Now the city is, well, at least up until de Blasio. De Blasio is taking it, backward a bit. But there is tremendous growth in the city. The young people want to be in the city. Not just for job opportunities, but for the lifestyle opportunities. It's amazing. Young people today, Mike, when we turned 16, you couldn't wait to get, your driver's license and borrow, dad's keys and take the car out.
Hit the road.
Young people today are not as interested in that. They're not getting their licenses as quickly as they used to. And now, now that you have Uber, or now that, they live in the city, having a car, one, it's an expense, and a tremendous expense, but also it's inconvenient if you want to live and work, in a city. So when you have, projects on Long Island like we've seen in Patchogue and Farmingdale, proposed for Ronkonkoma, and there was even a proposal in my district on the old Smithtown Central High School school district offices. It's an old building. The community came out in opposition, but it's literally located across the street from the Smithtown Railroad Station. So, there are even people who, for example, live in Kings Park or Smithtown that will take the train out to Port Jefferson. There's quite a popular pub out in Port Jeff Station, and it's a riot. Some of my friends, they will literally take the train out, so you don't have to deal with the car, and you don't have to worry about possible DWI, et cetera. So, people are more willing than ever before to use mass transit. And so if you're going to revive your downtowns, in my district, the number one problem is lack of sewer capacity. That is constraining, your growth. But in this year's budget, we had $40 million for sewer capacity to help get that ball rolling in Smithtown and Kings Park. That will be a huge help. The third rail comes in. That will absolutely help further development along and growth along the Port Jefferson branch of the Long Island Railroad. And today, with so many brick and mortar stores closing, and I saw, over the break, there was a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about how, up to 20% of the nation's malls may be closing, over the next 10 years or so because of this migration to, young people. They buy on Amazon. And it's amazing. My daughter, she's Amazon Prime,
Right.
free shipping. You know, even I shop on Amazon. I let her do the ordering. I write her the check, and it comes to your door.
Doesn't get much easier.
It doesn't, and you save time. And young people don't have they don't have the time either. Everyone's working hard to pay the property taxes.
And to them, it just makes sense anyway because it's a time saver. You
Absolutely.
you do the order. You don't have to go to the store. You don't have to go to the mall.
Sure.
Which is, for young, upwardly mobile people, if they still use that expression, it's just a time suck.
So how do you stem the tide of young people leaving the state of New York? The upstate economy, there is no upstate economy. It's all public sector. So young people are leaving. On Long Island, we have a real gap, a 16% drop in 18 to 34s. How are you going to, how are employers? Employers have no incentive to stay if they can't get young people to move and to come to Long Island and stay on Long Island. So that's why these transit-oriented developments are becoming popular, not just with millennials, but also with 55 and older who want to get out from under the house and get into a simpler environment. And you want to keep your older people. Why? Because, well, they don't have kids in the school system. That's a help, but they have disposable income. The kids are out of the house and they're looking to enjoy themselves more, and that helps your restaurants, that helps your entertainment venues, et cetera. So, living in a downtown, people say in the old days, well, I'd like to be able to buy a pair of shoes and buy a suit downtown. People don't do that anymore. You either go out to the outlets or you do it online. I've purchased shoes and clothing that way, but you need people living downtown to make downtown work, and the ancillary services, entertainment, professional offices. If you're a lawyer, a dentist, a doctor, you can live downtown and work downtown. But Patchogue has now become the model of what the future of Long Island can and should be in your downtown areas. And they've done a wonderful job. You have some beautiful housing options available, both rental as well as condo. 3 and 4 stories. Sewer capacity is key. That's why it works. But also, you're close to the railroad station, and those businesses. People now say, "Hey, what do you do at night or on the weekends?" Hey, we head to Patchogue because Patchogue's got a bustling nightlife, great restaurants, and stores to meet the needs of the people who are now residing there. And downtown Smithtown and downtown Kings Park, you're seeing a change in attitude. That people understand now that we need to create housing opportunities for people. That's why we need sewer capacity. But bring people, and business comes as well. The different types of businesses, and then that helps. It maintains property values. It even improves property values. So, and that's why people in single-family homes are most concerned about is maintaining their property value, because that's their single largest asset.
Long Island is unique in the need for the sewer capacity,
Right.
but it is not unique in the problem of young people moving out. As I said earlier on, upstate New York is facing the exact same situation. The only place that's taking on people is New York City, and that kind of counters and makes the state population, I guess, kind of remain static. But with that said, is there any bigger picture things that this state could do to keep the young people here, and whether it was Long Island, upstate, or anywhere?
Well, the bigger picture is what can New York State do to become a more attractive business environment?
Right.
Where people have to work. And where are they going? They can't all work for the public sector. You need a tax base to support that. We already have too much government. That's one of the reasons why the taxes go up, businesses move because the tax burden gets too high. Well, there were 3 companies in the industrial park in my district that left. Good employers. One was Forest Laboratories. Good paying jobs. The tax burden is just too high. Another anecdotal story, but I think shines light on the problem at large. The state puts a lot of money into its university system. We have Stony Brook, what we consider the flagship of the 4 universities in the state in the SUNY system. And again, this is a true story. The medical school was recruiting a top flight research team out of Yale University. They had them. They were ready to commit, but before they could commit, they had to visit. They brought the spouses to look at the housing market. And this is in the Three Village area where they were looking, which is just next to my district. And what came back was, one, they thought the houses were too expensive. They needed work. But they said the deal killer, the property taxes.
Taxes. I was going to say, that was going to be my guess.
And they decided not to sign and come over. Now, in order for our universities to continue to thrive, you need to have talent. And yet, here's a top flight research team that decided not to come because they thought the tax burden was too high. So, we have to grapple with this. And when we look at, contracts, in Suffolk County, for example, that are coming due, and you have accumulated sick and vacation time in the millions of dollars, and this county does not have the money to pay for it, and they're going to come up to Albany and ask for permission to borrow. If we allow that to happen, you've turned a corner here, and you've gone through a door that you can never go back the other way. And it's very, very dangerous. So I believe that within a decade, and again, we've got this new tide of progressivism in New York State. The governor now says we're going to be the progressive capital of the world. De Blasio and Mark Viverito and the city council speaker, progressivism. There's not enough money in the state to pay for all of this progressivism. It's free stuff for everybody. It's buying votes. And that's getting the kickback from the organizations that benefit from a campaign time. It is unsustainable. Progressivism is unaffordable and unsustainable. You can't keep giving free stuff to people and expect businesses to stay here because they're not going to pay for it.
And it's a huge part of why your property taxes are so high.
And the pension problem is part of that because the public sector pensions are now on an unsustainable, even though we have a strong fund. We've got the trend of longevity and the growth of contracts that are, Suffolk County is $350 million borrowed just to meet their required payments. That's unsustainable.
Oh.
So, and you can add a number of other counties and, municipalities to that list. Even the state borrows to meet its actuarial contribution liability.
The old saw about to never underestimate your audience. The people are smart. The young people are really smart, and they see that there are other places where property taxes aren't so high. The people that are retiring in New York State know that there are places for them to retire where the bite isn't going to be nearly as bad as it is here in New York.
Here's a case in point. Again, we just came back from a break over.
The state's got to figure this out.
This past weekend, one of the editorials in the Wall Street Journal about the state of Connecticut. Now, the state of Connecticut, next door to the state of New York, the wealthiest state in the country per capita, the wealthiest state in the country per capita. Twice they have Governor Malloy, Democrat, legislature, Democrat, have, quote unquote, taxed the rich, get them to pay their fair share. Governor Malloy, guess what? General Electric picked up and moved to Boston. And now Aetna Insurance, which has been, since the mid-1800s, has been in the state of Connecticut, is now going to leave. All right?
To a place called, that they used to have the nickname of Taxachusetts?
Taxachusetts, right? So what is happening now is Governor Malloy has said, we cannot, because what do the progressives say? Well, let's raise more taxes on the rich. Capital goes to where it's most wanted and best treated. And people are moving. You are accelerating, and this is happening in New York as well, with this progressivism. You're accelerating the trend of people who are moving out or claiming, their residence elsewhere and leaving New York. We lose tax revenue, we lose philanthropic opportunities here because they take their philanthropic dollars and their disposable income out of state.
And that's going to be it for us today. Mike Fitzpatrick,
Mike.
always interesting. Just a couple weeks to go. We'll see what happens at the end of this legislative session. We thank you folks for joining us today. We'll hope we'll see you for that next edition of Assembly Calendar.